everyone, welcome to the Sunday Night Indigenous Sex Show.
Woo!
We just want to thank everyone for tuning in last week. We had got 1,300 views in 24 hours.
Woo, woo, woo.
Woo! So thank you.
So we also wanted to just let everyone know we are also now on YouTube. I want to send a special thank you to Emily who sat down with me. So now if you YouTube Sunday Night Indigenous Sex Show, Sex and Love Show, you will find us on YouTube. So we really want to start making the Indigenous Sex and Love Show more accessible to community members. And we really want to help grow this project to get that sexual health information out there to our communities and both people from not our community as well. So we also what we're going to talk today. Today's episode is going to be on dating and particularly the first date. And we're going to kind of make probably 3 separate videos, and the first one's going to be on today is that's our first date, how to interact with people on our first dates. The second video will probably be on the second dates and the dating process, and the third video we'll make is probably going to be on when you're in a relationship with somebody and how to maintain that positive relationship.
So we're going to talk about the different approaches to dating. So there's apps now, there's online dating, there's dating in person, meeting people at social events, dating at the workplace. And so the most important thing to consider before you start dating is making sure you have a healthy relationship with yourself. Because if you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself, you could find yourself in a really vulnerable position where you find yourself codependent with relationships and the person you're dating. You end up serial dating, and it puts you in a really vulnerable position where you're not happy with yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing that we want to really emphasize on the Sunday Night Indigenous Sex and Love Show is about safety and making sure that you are safe, both mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as well. So we want to make sure that we're really encouraging people to be, if they're going to be dating people, to not be putting themselves in vulnerable positions, especially if they're not having a healthy relationship with themselves first, because that could put you into a lot of strange positions, right? So we're gonna move on to safe practices for dates. Once again, we really want to emphasize important safe practices. So if you're gonna be meeting somebody for a first date, we'd like to encourage people to maybe consider meeting in a public place. So somewhere like coffee, somewhere like dinner, somewhere where there's lots of people around. So some unsafe first dates may be meeting someone who you don't know at their home environment, meeting someone in a secluded park area, getting in a car and parking somewhere where you're not familiar with. As many people know, especially our Indigenous women, have a high rate of being murdered and going missing, and so we want to make sure that we're promoting for our first dates and meeting people to do so in a public place where you're going to be safe and there's lots of people around, and so that you can ask for help if you're ever put in an unsafe position.
So we're going to talk about now, what are some good dates? So lots of people think movies are a good date, but they're actually not, because you don't get to interact with the person that much because you're sitting in a dark theater watching something. So you don't get to talk to them, you don't get to know them. A good date is set up in a space where you get to talk to the person and know their values, what clan they are, what tribe they are they Ojibwe, are they Mohawk? You want to be able to get to know them and know their values.
Absolutely.
So a good place to
do they like scone? Do they like bannock? Right? You want to make sure that are we not cousins? We want to make sure
especially in our community.
Right.
We're dating within our community.
And we really want to talk about dating, and this is really important as the Sunday Night Indigenous Sex and Love Show, that we do recognize that Indigenous people do have a different way of dating one another, and that we do have a much smaller community. And so this is another thing we want to talk about, safe practices, is when dating people in our community and dating people who may be at our workplace environment, to be strongly considering how, if this relationship does not work out, how it could impact your work, your social circles, and all those other things. And we want to make sure that we're not standing in the way of people from having relationships with people they care about. But these are things that we have to consider, because many people who do date in their workplace or in their community end up, if they end up breaking up in the future, they're seeing each other at powwows, they're seeing each other at meetings, they're seeing each other in the community, and so this creates some discomfort. So we want to make sure that we're encouraging people to really consider who they date and when they're dating them, and especially at the workplace environment. We really want to encourage people to be conscious of all the barriers that may come with that relationship.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like I was taught, like once you begin a relationship with somebody, like that relationship never ends. You will have that relationship for the rest of your life, whether they're your partner or not. Like you're gonna always have a connection with them. So to move further on, we're gonna talk about some good dates. So coffee is an excellent first date. It allows you to sit down with the person, get to talk to them one-on-one in like a really safe environment at like a coffee shop, and then like you get to decide like near the end of the date whether you want to move forward and do something else, like go walk in a park, or if you want to end it there, because you'll know within like the first 5 minutes whether or not you're feeling this date or not.
Yeah.
So that's a really good example for a first date.
And what I like about the coffee date as well is that, so see, dinner's another great date. But if you go for dinner, you know, sometimes you could be waiting for a little while for your food, and you're like, I don't really feel this person. I'm not comfortable with how this date's going, and you know, dinner could last up to an hour. Where coffee or an adult beverage, for say, this is something that you know you can have one drink. You can take maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and then you can always weasel your way out of that date and say, oh, this has been really nice, but I actually have something I have to do. I'm going to meet up with friends, or I had an appointment, or and that way you're setting yourself up with a safety plan to not put yourself in a long-term date with somebody that you're not necessarily interested in.
So yeah, coffee dates, dinner has its pros and cons. Dating like fun activities like going to the zoo, going to Hyde Park, and to the petting zoo. Those are all like kind of say fun dates to do. And Edward's gonna move into who pays for the first date. Who pays
for the first date? Now this is such a controversial issue, and I'm not sure that there is a right or wrong answer for this. I personally, I was raised that from my perspective that myself as a man, if I initiate a date with somebody, that I am to accommodate that date. But I think the real answer here is about clear communication when you're going on to the date. So for instance, if you're going on your very, very first date with somebody, you should be expecting to at very least take care of yourself, whether you were asked or not asked out on the date, whoever did the initiating of the date. And if you don't have money, and someone invites you for dinner, says, hey, like I'm really interested in you, would you like to go for dinner on a Friday night? If you don't have money to take care of yourself, so just make sure you communicate that with the person in a way that is both respectful to them and respectful to yourself. So saying things like, oh, I'd really love to go out with you, however, I don't get paid until this date. And that will give the person an opportunity to say, oh, well, no problem, I can pick up the tab. But you want to make sure that you're doing that up front, so you're not putting the person in the position when it comes time to pay the bill that they are looking at you like, oh, are you going to pay your half of the bill? Because different people have different teachings and different values on who pays for the bill. And so I think just having clear communication with that and compromise as well. And we want to stay away from gender expectations of the man's supposed to pay or the woman's supposed to pay. And we really want to try to also acknowledge that our two-spirit, gender neutral, and our friends and family from the LGBTQ community as well. And so we wanted to make sure that we're not putting gender roles on who pays for the first date. However, once again, I think the solution here is about clear communication.
Yeah, that's totally right. Okay. So we're also going to talk about
red flags.
Red flags.
Oh no, how do you know? Okay.
So the first red flag is if the person you're on a date with always talks about their ex. Like that is a huge red flag. Like they are not ready to move on and meet new people. Avoid them. Like the flag. Just kidding.
Well, especially especially for the first date. You know what I mean? If they're there talking about their ex, they're not. Exactly. They're still focused on something in the past. They're not ready to move forward. Yeah. So avoid talking about your ex on a date.
Yeah. Avoid talking about the ex. And then secondly, if the person you're on a date with, or even yourself, over talking about yourself or the person you're on a date with is talking about themselves way too much, like that just kind of goes to show like they're very self-centered, that they're not very interested in you, that they're more interested in their own needs and priorities. There's a bus coming by.
There's a bus coming by.
It's really loud.
But and you know what? That's really really important too, because when you're on a date, the idea is about sharing and about interacting with one another, and to make sure that you're asking reciprocal questions in which the other person could share something about themselves. So make sure we're not talking too much.
It's really important to listen too. Listening is really important on first dates. And then thirdly, if the person is too forward with like wanting to have sex like within that first date and expressing like sexual intimacy right away, and like not, and like pushing your boundaries and pushing your buttons and really highlighting the fact that they just, it's about sex really. So that is another red flag to be concerned about.
Absolutely. And you know what, like, we have to remember that people have their own boundaries, and if you want to date somebody, it's so important that we're respecting other people's boundaries, not being too forward, not being too touchy-feely, especially if it's the first date. You know, you might be sending the wrong signal to the person if you're being over-aggressive. And you know, in a later video, we're going to talk about consent. Now, consent isn't necessarily just saying no. Sometimes people are saying no with their actions, and you're not picking up on their social cues. If you're leaning in to kiss a woman, for instance, or a man, and they're pulling away, that means no. If you're touching somebody on their body and getting closer to the area and they're pushing your hand away, that means no. They don't need to tell you no. They're telling you no with their physical actions. We want to make sure that we're not invading people's space.
Yeah. So important. So that talks about a little bit about the red flags, and we'll talk about the green flags. So good attributes to a first date with the person you're seeing. If they listen and respect your boundaries, so as we're talking about like people who push their boundaries, like that's a red flag. So if they're respecting, you know, your personal boundaries and your personal space and like what you feel comfortable with, that's really awesome. And if they listen to when you're speaking, if they ask questions about you, like they're very interested in who you are, and lastly, if they're good at communicating with you, like if you're able to have open dialogue about, you know, what your beliefs are and like what they want, and they're able to understand what you want in relationships or for your future, like that's really awesome too.
Absolutely. And I want to kind of just go into with and all this stuff applies as well with even online dating, because online dating and things like Tinder and Lava Life and all these are a lot of the way our young people are dating now. And so we want to make sure that we're applying those same respectful ways of interacting with people even online. So, you know, asking people to send you inappropriate pics sometimes cannot be always that could be a red flag as well. Asking, you know, being too sexually assertive when you're talking, unless the person is reciprocating that, you could be potentially sharing or scaring away somebody that could be a long-term partner for yourself. So we want to make sure that we're asking good questions and we're being respectful and wanting to know who the person is, right? And so these are just some basic dating tips. The other thing we want to talk a little bit about is texting and calling after a date. So who texts or who calls after the first date? And I think either person can do that after. And I know there's all this like, oh, wait like 3 days, don't text them, don't call them back. I view these as like a game that people play. And I think if you had a good time and enjoyed yourself with somebody, whether you were the person who asked the person out on a date or whether you were the person who got asked on a date, it's always nice to say, hey, I just want to let you know I had a really great time. I'd love to do that again. And then you obviously wait for them to reciprocate that back to you. And a lot of dating, healthy dating, comes from reciprocation. It's giving and taking at the same time, right? So if that person doesn't text you back or message you back, that could be a social cue that maybe they're not interested in you. So you don't want to over pursue, over text, or push somebody away. Because sometimes when we're really interested in someone, we over text them, we over call them, and what we're doing is we're actually pushing them away from us. So we want to make sure that we're not coming across as needy or clingy, And the way that we do that is by making sure that the interactions we're having are reciprocal interactions. Do you have anything to add on to that?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. That concludes our episode for today.
That is. And so we want to thank everyone for tuning in once again. Next week we're gonna have a really, really special episode. And I got a big smile on my face right now, and so does Lauren, because next week's episode is gonna be a little bit more fun. So hope you tune in for next Sunday. I hope some of this information was beneficial to our community members who are in the process of dating right now. So I want to thank everybody. We absolutely love you. Have a great day. See you next Sunday.